Broadcasting.
Blog Talk USA.
1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet. Exit again.
FwdRad announced the arrival of their flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
It is Monday, February 15th, the year of our Lord, 2016. Welcome to T&Z Talk. I am Tony Trupiano. Richard Zombeck is the co-host of this little three-ring circus we call radio, and what an interesting weekend. And Z, I would love to sit here and wax poetically about what you did over the weekend and how the weather was, but you know what? I just keep on hearing the song in my head. Ding dong, the witch is dead.
I was kind of wondering if we were going to go there. I can't tell you how many tweets and phone calls. I mean, phone calls from people I rarely even hear from, and text messages, because everyone that knows me knows how political I am. Just like, gay friends of mine, conservative friends of mine, liberal friends of mine. And from the liberal and gay friends of mine, it was mostly things like, I don't generally like to dance on someone's grave, but, and I was kind of torn, too, to tell you the truth, Tony, because, my humanity...
Well, I got your text. I was with you.
Yeah. My humanity kind of conflicted with my politics to a certain degree. It's always sad when someone dies, and Scalia was a brilliant guy, very funny, had a terrific sense of humor. I've always found it interesting that he and the notorious RGB, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, are very good friends and had vacation together, and their families hung out together, and they really appreciated each other. They didn't really appreciate each other's views, but they appreciated each other's personalities, which, to me shows that even people with strong social and moral and political values can still get along, something that we're not seeing in politics very often. But that's what happens when you have highly intelligent people with opinions. They don't let their emotions get in the way, as we saw on the debate stage recently, which was... I think they're talking about getting Jerry Springer to moderate the next GOP debate, actually.
There may be some that may be appropriate. Antonin Scalia, if you'll recall, it was probably a month ago that you and I kind of raked him over the coals for his comments on race in America. And I'm certainly not dancing on anyone's grave, and I got an interesting response or interesting responses. Some of it through social media, some of it more personal or direct. But somebody had posted on, I think it was one of my Facebook pages, who's going to be the first candidate to say thoughts and prayers?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't even think that came out, did it? I mean, they didn't even go to thoughts and prayers. They went directly to, we're going to block any nomination that comes out of the White House. That was their first talking point. And and here's the thing, Tony, and this is kind of odd, because that would normally be something that they would keep hush-hush, right? Where they would go, hey, listen, we're going to go with thoughts and prayers, but here's what we're going to do. Anything that black dude sends to us, we're going to block, and he's not going to get a nomination through until we get one of ours in there. But they came right out and said, hey, listen, we're going to do everything we can to block any potential nomination that Obama has. And for the next 11 months, he's not going to get anything done. Which I don't know. I mean,
it's just astounding, Z, when you think about Mitch McConnell and, literally, Antonin Scalia is pronounced dead. They get word. Less than an hour later, he's out there saying, no, we will not do a nominee, and we will not vote on a nominee. We are going to, interestingly, Ted Cruz, Mr. Constitutionalist himself, is the ringleader of we're not going to allow this to happen. Maybe I get this wrong, but did we not reelect President Obama by more than 5 million votes over Mitt Romney? And doesn't he have a constitutional responsibility to do his job until January of 2017?
Well, and that's exactly the point, right? Is there one? Okay, so there are a couple points in this. One, they're saying that we haven't nominated a Supreme Court justice during the end of a president's term in the last 80 years. That's their talking point.
Which is a lie.
When Kennedy was in Reagan's last term, in fact, his last year, I believe. And then the other talking point is we're going to leave it up to the American people to decide who's going to be the nominee. Well, Elizabeth Warren made a very good point. The American people have already told you who they want to nominate a Supreme Court justice by electing Obama not once, but twice, right? So this is, again, the GOP completely dismissing Obama as a president, and also their normal hypocritical stance of they're for the Constitution. Like you said, they're constitutionalists, and it's very clear in the Constitution that not only does President Obama have a right to do this, he has an obligation per the Constitution to nominate a Supreme Court justice to replace Scalia.
And an obligation is the operative word there, Z. And my concern is we've got a 4-4 split ideologically. Learned over the weekend that if they are to vote 4-4, then the lower court decision stands. So exactly. What's the point at this point of having a Supreme Court, especially with some of the issues that are facing us right now? There's the Texas abortion decision that needs to come. There's California teachers versus the NLRB or whatever, but that's a big union, public sector union decision that needs to come. There are some big decisions that this court is weighing right now into literally ideologically tie the hands of the court. Now, let me also suggest that there has to be a jurist or two out there that would be palatable to both parties. Don't you think there's got to be at least one?
Yeah, there is, in fact. And I am trying to find his name. He's Asian American and Indian American. He actually was confirmed, but not appointed by the GOP 3 years ago in a unanimous.
Was it the 97-0 vote?
It was 97-0 vote, and he was extremely palatable to the GOP, and was a nominee of Obama's. So there we have it.
So let's just.
We already have headlines that would be perfectly acceptable, and that they're going to hold this up for the next 340 days is ludicrous, really.
Well, one of the pundits I saw on television yesterday actually made a very good point that the Republicans have to deal with. The names that are being bandied about right now, Z. There are women, there are minorities, and in fact, I think all of the names fit into one of those categories. And so how do you reconcile as a Senate, as a candidate, well qualified. Now, I understand where they might have a huge difference on Janet Napolitano, who is one of the names that has been thrown out there. I can see where that would be an issue for the Republicans. But I don't think President Obama is going to throw somebody out there just to create a political firestorm. Do you?
No, I don't think so either. The name of the judge that they were looking at was Srinivasan. Right. And he's part Asian American, part Indian American, and I think Indian, the country of India, not Native American. But they confirmed him 97-0. So if he were to put that, here's the thing, and this is what I was thinking over the weekend, and that I had a lot of discussions about over the weekend. So either way this goes, it's a win for Obama and for the Democrats. One, let's take what you said. The EPA, through executive order, recently put out a law, basically, or a rule that states would have to be responsible for lowering their emission standards by 30% by, I want to say, the year 2030, but I'm not completely sure. So corporations and Republicans, it was ruled on at a lower court. They ruled for that. Corporations and Republicans took that to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled on it last week, struck it down, and basically said that it was an overreach on the part of Obama, which to a certain degree I can agree with. Obama doesn't control the federal government and its departments, and most of those rules or any kind of regulations or guidelines that something like the EPA, a department like the EPA would put out, requiring states to follow these guidelines should be ruled on by Congress. Of course, in this current climate, nothing's getting done, so Obama, did it through executive order. The Supreme Court last week struck that down, okay? So where we are right now, with the courts split the way they are, Obama could feasibly order the EPA to create a new and slightly different rule, let it go through the lower courts, have it pass. The corporations and the oil companies, again, would take that to the Supreme Court, potentially get a split decision, getting it knocked down, which renders the ruling back to the original lower court, allowing that to go through. So there's a lot of tactical things that can happen here. On the other side, and feel free to break in if I'm going on too long.
When you're done, I want to read Senator Warren. You posted Senator Warren's statement, but so when you're done with your analysis, which is excellent, Professor, I want to read her statement because I think it puts things perfectly.
Sure, and this is a perfect segue to that. Is what's happened here, and I kind of said this, and I said this to a conservative friend of mine who talks about God's will all the time. And I said, this was a gift from God for the electorate of this country. And I'm not saying Scalia's death. I'm saying the position that we're in as a result of Scalia's death. I want to make that very clear. The electorate in this country is ignorant, and I mean that in the best possible way, that it's a question of lack of education, lack of being informed, and very few people understand the importance of the next president in appointing Supreme Court nominees. This brings everything to the forefront of the political discussion. This will allow the American electorate to see how far the Republicans are able and willing to go to prevent a Democratic president from getting anything done. This shows everyone in the country how important it is to not have someone like Scalia on there who is anti-LGBT rights, who is anti-freedom, basically, a constitutionalist and an originalist that holds the Constitution to the original words and meanings of the 1700s. and allows for no change, no societal or governmental change to occur based on that document. So this brings everything to a very obvious point in our electoral process where people can see how important this election is, because there are 3 more, possibly 4 more Supreme Court nominees coming for the next president. So with that, I will be quiet and let you pontificate.
Thank you, Professor. And I'm not going to pontificate, but just read U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren's statement that you posted early this morning, and it'll speak for itself. The sudden death of Justice Scalia creates an immediate vacancy on the most important court in the United States. Senator McConnell is right that the American people should have a voice in the selection of the next Supreme Court justice. In fact, they did, when President Obama won the 2012 election by 5 million votes. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution says the President of the United States nominates justices to the Supreme Court with the advice and consent of the Senate. I can't find a clause that says except when there's a year left in the term of a Democratic president. Senate Republicans took an oath just like Senate Democrats did. Abandoning the duties they swore to uphold would threaten both the Constitution and our democracy itself. It would also prove that all the Republican talk about loving the Constitution is just that, empty talk. Bravo, Senator Warren. Bravo.
Yeah, and to that point, too, there have been at least 14 Supreme Court justices that have been confirmed during election years. And, you know, Ted Cruz is going on that he's going to filibuster this and that it's never going to happen. And this is a guy, Ted Cruz, that was rendered speechless during the debate because the moderator shamed him for lying about justices not being appointed in election years. So, you know, and then we've got Rubio, we've got McConnell, we've got GOP machine saying this is never going to happen. We're not going to do it. It's unprecedented. Let the American people decide in the election. And, you know, in the background saying we're all about the Constitution.
Well, in fact, we have some audio with Marco Rubio sitting in on Meet the Press yesterday with Chuck Todd. If you don't mind, I'd like to shoot that right now. It's a little bit long, but well worth the 5 minutes and 41 seconds.
He said earlier this morning that he would filibuster any choice that President Obama made. Are you taking the same position?
Yeah, but he won't have to because Mitch McConnell's already made it very clear that we're not going to move forward until there's an election. And I think that's the right decision. The court can function with 8 justices. In the last year, within the last few months of the president's term, we should not be appointing Supreme Court justices. Now, the president could go ahead and nominate whoever he wants. The Senate shouldn't move forward on it until after the election. We're going to have an election in November. One of the key...
So if you're elected president, will you promise not to make an appointment in your final year?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying the president can't make an appointment. I'm saying we're not going to move forward on it in the Senate. And that has been the practice now for over 80 years. He shouldn't. He has the legal right to do it. But and as president, I would recognize that precedent. And the precedent that's been set over the last 80 years has been that in the last year of a president's term, in the second term especially, there should not be Supreme Court nominees put into lifetime positions for a president that you're not going to be able to hold accountable at the ballot box. There's going to be an election in November. This is going to be an issue in the election. The voters are going to choose a new president. And that new president, who I believe will be me, should then fill that vacancy for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court.
Started with Senator Rubio asking him whether the Senate has an obligation to give the president's Supreme Court nominee an up or down vote.
We have an obligation to do it, but not now. The term of the Supreme Court is already, they just started it, but it's not all year long. The court can function with 8 justices. It does it all the time, especially when justices have to recuse themselves. For example, Kagan had to recuse herself early in her term because she just left the administration. We're going to have an election in November where this vacancy is going to be an item of debate, and voters are going to get to weigh in. So I just don't think it's wise, and there's precedent for this, for a president nearing the last few months of his administration to put someone on the court that may be there for 30 years.
So you don't think that, I understand that, and I understand the decision that you may not support, that the Republican majority doesn't want this, but aren't they obligated to at least go through the motions here? I mean, you're saying don't even go through the motions. Why?
Correct. Well, we will go through the motions, but not while Barack Obama's in the White House.
Well, why? I mean, do presidential terms end after 3 years? I mean, that's what I don't understand is why not go through the advice and consent? You don't have to approve it. You can reject it. That's what happened in 68. But why not go through this process?
Because it's not just for the Supreme Court, even for appellate courts. It's been both parties have followed this precedent. There comes a point in the last year of the president, especially in their second term, where you stop nominating or you stop the advice and consent process. You basically say, at this point, with a few months left in your term, no accountability from the ballot box on the appointment you're going to make on a lifetime appointment.
11
that's
months.
The important thing here. These are. These are not laws that can be...
I understand that, but...
Yeah, right, but these are not laws that can be reversed. In essence, this is a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the country at a time when the balance of the Constitution and the court's interpretation of it is at stake. We're not moving forward on it. Mitch McConnell's already made that very clear. I support it 100%. Here's the bottom line. I don't trust Barack Obama on the appointment of Supreme Court justices. We cannot afford to have Scalia replaced by someone like the nominees he's put there in the past. We're going to have an election. There's going to be a new president. I believe it's going to be me, and we're going to look for someone that most resembles Scalia to replace him.
Now, Senator, when you say lame duck, President Obama's basically been a lame duck since he was reelected in 2012. Are you saying that no president can appoint someone to the Supreme Court in their second term?
Well, I'm not saying it's illegal. He most certainly has the power to nominate someone. The Senate's already said it. Mitch McConnell last night was very clear. We are not moving forward on the Supreme Court nominee until after this election. And one of the reasons why is this president is no longer, he's now at the end. If this was early in his second term, that's one thing, but he now has less than a year left in office. The Supreme Court can function with 8 justices. They're not in year round, so they can get through this term of the Supreme Court with all of its decisions. They've done this before. And then there'll be an election in November, and we're going to have a debate about what kind of justice should replace Scalia. And the voters are going to get to vote for a new president. And I think this will be part of their calculus. So I think we should wait till after November before we move forward on confirming any justice to the Supreme Court. The president can nominate whoever he wants, but the Senate's not going to act, and that's pretty clear. So we can be debating it, but we're not moving forward on it, period.
But Ronald Reagan named Anthony Kennedy to the Supreme Court in November of his 7th year, and Kennedy was actually confirmed in Reagan's 8th year. So are you saying somehow that November is okay, but 3 months later is over the line?
Yeah, again, I mean, it doesn't really matter what they've done. Reagan did back in 87. It was in 87 when he nominated him. And so obviously it was still earlier in the year. This was November, October, or September of last year where the president had more than a year left in office. Then perhaps this would be a different discussion. But he now has basically about 11 months, 10 and a half months left in office. We have an election coming up. There'll be a debate over what the Supreme Court justices should be like. And voters are going to weigh in November, and they're going to elect a new president. So I think the president should allow the next president to appoint the justice to the Supreme Court. And if it's me, and I anticipate that it will be, I'm going to look for someone in the mold of Justice Scalia who, while irreplaceable, I think is a model jurist and one of the great jurists in American history.
Well, if it's me, and I'm assuming it will be me, the word precedent came up, I don't know, I stopped keeping track after 7. There is no precedent on this.
On which part?
On his assertion that the president don't nominate Supreme Court justices in the last year of their presidency.
Right. Well, but they do.
That's my point.
They absolutely do. So it makes absolutely no sense what any of them are saying. And again, this is the GOP meme of we're going to say it because until it's true, right? There's no precedent for the last 80 years. This has not happened in the last 80 years. It has. It's happened 14 times in the last 80 years. So this is how. I mean, I can name you the 14. I'll just name you the ones in the last. Anthony Kennedy, like you said, and then back to 1940, Frank Murphy, and then Benjamin Cardozo in 1932. I mean, it goes back all the way to 1796 that justices have been confirmed in election years, and this is a body politic that says that they follow the Constitution. You've got Ted Rubio, all of them saying what an important document is and how it shouldn't be violated, and here they are violating it and not holding to their oath of office and not upholding the Constitution and not doing their jobs simply because they're wrong. They believe that they're going to win in November, which they will more than likely not, and so they're going to hold up any kind of process for the next 340 days.
The quote, he can do whatever he wants, we're not going to act on it. Well, Chris Wallace, Chuck Todd, and George Stephanopoulos all made a very good point. Let nominate. The advice is move it, but let the process move. You know why they do that? Because they know he is going to nominate someone who is reasonable. This is going to be a Bork thing. I'm just disgusted. I'm disgusted by the dialogue, Z. I'm disgusted by this reality that if this were to happen under a Republican president, they wouldn't say a freaking word. They'd be salivating to put their person in there.
And they didn't either. And what I found particularly interesting is Rubio saying it doesn't matter what Reagan did. Since when does it not matter to the GOP what Reagan did?
Yeah, thank
Reagan
you very much.
So let me calm you down a little.
Okay? Good luck. Good luck.
Because I'm equally disgusted as you are. I'm equally, I hate to use the word offended, but I'm equally offended by the hypocrisy and brashness with which they're charging forward with this. That the first words out of their mouth when their favorite jurist died was, "We're not going to have anyone in there, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that no one gets nominated." And coming out that strong with a tactic that is essentially unconstitutional. But here's the thing. Let me go back to my earlier point. Is because of this, Tony, because of the attention that it's going to draw on the importance of this, the way in which the Republicans are going to embarrass themselves and show their true colors and show themselves for who they really are. This fight over the next 11 months actually gives me some hope, because there's no way that anyone, whether you pay attention or not, isn't going to get some sort of understanding of what's going on, of how things work, and it's bringing the definition and the reality of democracy to the forefront of the conversation in this country. And I think that is, again, the universe and God or whatever did us a favor by allowing this conversation to happen. And that, as contentious as it's going to be, and as ridiculous as it's going to be, and as infuriating as it's going to be, actually does give me some hope for the upcoming election.
Well, there were two voices of reason on the Republican side before we get on to the debate on Saturday night. Donald Trump ironically enough, and John Kasich really were, pretty reasonable about this particular issue. But even to take a step back and to look at it more globally, you look at John Kasich right now, and he seemingly, as much as I despise many of the things he did as governor in Ohio and when he served in Congress, he has really tried to calm down the American electorate by saying, why can't we talk about stuff that matters? And Donald Trump, obviously much more brash, delay. And he's right. I mean, he's absolutely right. Listen, you were good enough to put together a little debate mashup from Saturday. So let me play that real quick, and we'll transition over to that.
I'm sick and tired of him going after my family. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
It's not about my family.
En español, si quieres. This is a matter of principle, and I'll tell you.
Biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush.
Right. He lied about Ben Carson in Iowa. He lies about Thanksgiving. He lies about marriage. He's lying about all sorts of things, and now he makes things up.
But Kennedy was confirmed in '88. No, Kennedy was confirmed in '87. He was appointed. He was appointed in '88. That's the question. Is it appointing or confirming? In this case, it's both. But if I could answer the question. All right. I just want to get the facts straight for the audience. I apologize.
This is a tremendous blow to conservatism. It's a tremendous blow, frankly, to our country. I think it's up to Mitch McConnell and everybody else to stop it. It's called delay.
Harry Reid and Barack Obama would ram down our throat a liberal justice.
So I believe the president should not move forward, and I think that we ought to let the next president of the United States decide who is going to run that Supreme Court.
Fully agree that we should not allow a judge to be appointed.
I'm a guy who gets his foreign policy from the shows.
Oh, yeah.
Guy who...
You can fill out your taxes on a postcard.
You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied. Okay. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
I got to tell you, this is just crazy, huh? This is just nuts, okay? Jeez, oh, man.
Well, it was crazy, and it was nuts, and it is not the way that adult men who are running for the presidency should act, Z, number one. Number two, and again, I hate to stroke Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form, but he was absolutely right. We were lied into the war in Iraq, and the president, former President George W. Bush, should be held accountable for that, as should the de facto president, Dick Cheney. I could go on for days on all of the outrage that I felt watching the debate on Saturday night. But the outrage wasn't on what was being said, but how they were acting. And I'm sorry, but at some point, when does this just become nothing but a big charade? When, and if it hasn't already, how the hell do you choose? And then I'm looking at the polling after the debate where, 30-something% of people saying Marco Rubio won the debate. So what? What did he win?
Well, and Marco Rubio also said, no, I'm sorry, it was Cruz who said, this is beautiful too. If the Democrats are allowed to pick a nominee, there will be abortions on demand across the country. I don't even know what that means. And all it reminded me of was Rubio's comment of that Hillary Clinton would allow abortions up until the due date. Right? Up until the due date, Tony. Someone on Twitter, I posted that on Twitter, and someone on Twitter, a woman, posted back to me. She goes, what, are the doctors going to be standing there with a hammer waiting for it to come out? And, I tweeted her back. I said, I was thinking the same thing. I was just too afraid to say it out loud. And, this is the kind of stuff that they're talking about, right? There's going to be abortions in the streets. They're going to be fetuses everywhere. And it's just going to be holy bedlam with abortions on demand. Just everyone's going to be going in and getting an abortion if we don't get the right Supreme Court justice in here, because that's what the left is all about, is killing babies. I mean, and what got me, I agree with you with the amount of times that people were screaming at each other, calling each other liars, the personal attacks and everything. But what really struck me was the crowd booing facts. I mean, every time someone came up with an actual fact, like the moderator or Trump about, Jeb Bush didn't keep us safe, 9/11 happened under his watch, and not to mention Katrina. How safe were we after that storm? I mean, it took days, weeks for anything to happen. So to say that he was one of the greatest presidents, I'm sorry. I mean, Jeb Bush. I love my mommy. I love my daddy. My daddy's one of the best men I've ever known. My mother is so strong, and I actually like Trump's reaction. Well, then she should be running. I mean, that was beautiful.
Well, it gets embarrassing. It really does. It gets embarrassing. One of the criticisms of President Obama was that after he was elected, he became an apologist for the United States, which is, of course, fundamentally untrue. But after Bush-Cheney, we needed a president that understood how to finesse the world. And I think President Obama did a wonderful job of finessing the world at that point. Has he been perfect? Absolutely not, Z. Absolutely not. Do I have a problem with George W. going out and humping for Jeb? I could care less. I could care less what George W. does, because he's already done the damage. And if Jeb Bush really believes that people don't have memories and they don't really understand what they did, well, Donald Trump's there to remind us, right? Okay, I'm okay with all of that. The offense that I'm talking about is the utter lack of respect and decorum for literally running for the highest political office in this land. And listen, whether you believe it or not, and I do, the President of the United States is the most powerful leader in the world. Which one of those six comes even close to being somebody you would want to put that label on? I can't think of one.
Well, if I had to pick one, it would be Kasich, but,
If you had to, and that's what I would do at this point. But, sweet God, at what, you texted me right after the debate, and you said, maybe we shouldn't even talk about this on Monday because nothing happened.
Exactly. Well, we just played the clip of what happened. I mean, that's right. What happened. Right? 5 minutes instead of 2 hours. I mean, I can't even believe that I sat there for 2 hours watching this. And here's the thing with GW. Here's the thing with GW is Jeb is trotting his brother out, who was responsible for not only the Iraq War and ISIS and the financial crisis and our debt and the recession and no response to Katrina and whatever. He's trotting them out, which should be a pretty big event here. So what does Donald Trump do? He's holding his own event. And what's the media covering? Donald Trump. So once again, he's completely sucking the oxygen out of the room and drawing all the attention away from what would otherwise be a pretty entertaining dynamic duo.
I don't mean to correct you on air, but you're being a little unfair to W on Katrina. He did allow Air Force One to go below 30,000 feet so we could look.
Right, exactly. And
so it's not fair of you to say he didn't do anything. He did sit in a very comfortable chair and look from the sky to see what he was going to do. But hey, Brownie, you're doing a wonderful job.
You're doing a hell of a job, Brownie.
Oh, sweet Jesus. And then the hilarious thing is they had Brownie on MSNBC last week talking about what's happening in Flint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay, hello.
But could you pick a different authoritative figure to do this, maybe?
Well, let's for a moment. By the way, I want to share with you that today in Michigan, Bernie Sanders is speaking at Eastern Michigan University, and I tried to get tickets and couldn't. John Kasich is here as well. In fact, he's doing an event as we speak. And he has 3 events scheduled. Bernie has 3 events scheduled. I may be able to get into the last one, which is at UAW Local 600. I've got some connections there. And so I'm hoping that I get a chance to see him this evening. But he's here for the entire day. And as I sit and watch what's developing on the Republican side of the aisle, and what the Clinton campaign is now doing on the Democratic side of the aisle, this is really kind of getting uncomfortable for a lot of people because there's a lot of process left yet, Z.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't close to being over.
No. Not even by a long shot.
No, I mean it's just insane. It is just insane. Anyway, I understand that President Obama does plan to nominate someone to the bench, and he may do that with this week. And then we'll have to see how that is. Well, we already know what's going to happen, but it'll be interesting to see how the Republicans spin it. And again, you said you hesitated to use the word offended, but I thought it was a pretty damned good word because the hypocrisy is offensive. At least it is to me, and I think it is to many, many others as well. As we kind of take a look at the issues that are facing us, let's factor in Congress as is more unpopular than they have ever been. This particular Congress has done even less than the last one, which I didn't think was humanly possible. There seems to be no room and no discussion about an agenda. The Republicans are now saying that they may not even vote on the budget that the president proposed. I could go on and on and on for the 17 minutes, 18 minutes we have left. And all of it is no, 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 no. So why are people Republicans, Z? Why are people choosing to identify with the Republican Party?
Tony, the budget, it's not even a question that they're not going to vote on it. They're not even going to look at it. That's what they've said. They're refusing to even review it. I mean, you want to talk about precedence? There is absolutely no precedence in the history of this country where something like that has ever happened. They are adamant that they're not even going to look at it. He sent them a budget. They're not even going to look at it. Paul Ryan said that in one of his announcements. We're not even going to look at it. We have other things to do. They are completely dismissing this president as a matter of course. Completely dismissing.
And although we were scheduled to discuss the budget last week, there were so many things going on we didn't get to it. But I do want to bring up a couple line items in the budget. One of them is funding for Veterans Affairs and related veterans issues. A 16% increase won't happen. There are other things. I don't need to walk through it chapter and verse. The point is, the president put together what I thought was a budget that was responsible, that paid down some debt. And let's remind this audience, the president has done a pretty sensational job of bringing down the national debt. They love to talk about, the whatever $0.1 trillion, blah, 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 blah. But he actually has saved this country a lot of money and has done it in a very hostile environment. Not to mention the fact, although the jobs that are being created aren't great jobs, we're not losing 800,000 jobs a month any longer, Z. We're actually adding about 240,000 jobs on average every month. When we talk about, and this is the other thing, I think you and I discussed this last week. Marco Rubio said the President of the United States has nothing to do with the economy. How do you reconcile that, do you think?
What was it? Well, I'm sorry, Tony.
He said that the President of the United States doesn't have an effect on the economy. And I don't know how he reconciles that statement.
Who said that?
Rubio.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rubio's inconsequential. When the economy's going down, when the economy's in trouble, it's all Obama's fault. When the economy's doing well, he has nothing to do with it. I mean, here's the thing. The deficit has gone down by so much that even Fox News was forced to report on it. Right? I mean, that's how well it's doing right now.
Do you remember that gaffe that they did when they showed the graph that showed that the deficit had increased, but the dialogue was that it decreased, but the graphic said that it increased? They refused to apologize for that.
Oh, of course. Why would they? Why would they apologize for anything?
Oh, that's a good question. Crazy. I mean, it's just this is just insane. All right, very quickly, I want to take a look at the reality of this next election, and certainly we Democrats have a chance to take back the Senate. Doubtful that they'll take back the House. One of the points that was made on one of the shows that I watched yesterday was, aren't the Republicans playing Russian roulette with this nominee? And that we may elect a Democratic president and a Democratic Senate, in essence, setting up a situation where they could, that the president, whoever it is at that point, could nominate somebody even more liberal than Obama would. And they wouldn't concede that point.
Yeah. I'd have to agree. I mean, let's go back to the previous conversation, right? Is that this is something. This is an argument that not only is going to educate and inform people, and allow the electorate to see how important this election is, if this is how hard the Republicans want to push on this, but on that point, it's also going to show people just what the GOP, at least the guys running, stand for, right? That they're anti-LGBT rights, that they're anti-LGBT, that they're anti-gay marriage, that they're anti-Hispanic, that they're anti-African-American, that they're anti-immigrant, that they're, that they are anti-every social change. I mean, the Onion, their headlines are just absolutely freaking brilliant. Their headline on Scalia's death was Chief Justice Scalia dies after 30-year battle with social justice. Right? And so, this is what we're looking at for the next 11 months, Tony. And you and I have had this discussion before about whether or not we believe that people are paying attention or are becoming more educated or whatever. And I get your apprehension and opinion that they're not, because of the things that we see and the stuff that we hear coming out of the Republican Party and the voters. But hashtag GOP debate was trending on Twitter the entire night that the debate was going on. And unlike Facebook, when you look on Facebook, you only see your friends or your friends' friends. If you look up what's being said with a particular hashtag, you get a pretty wide spectrum of what's going on out there. And the simple fact that hashtag GOP debate was the number one trending topic going on that night, along with the second one was Scalia dies or Scalia dead or something like that, was number two. But GOP debate was number one. And the majority of comments going on, at least on Twitter, were anti-GOP. Were people watching the debates and just hysterical laughter and they were just ridiculing the debates constantly. So that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people that are interested and relatively informed and not as ignorant as we might think, watching that debate and listening to the crowd who was howling and booing facts. Right? I mean, that's maybe where the GOP electorate is, but the rest of the country is paying attention and commenting.
Well, there's something that I wrote about last week that I want to share very briefly. Of the many emerging concerns, and certainly Flint, Michigan brought this front and center, was the need to update our infrastructure. Whether it be, infrastructure, I don't need to define it. If people don't understand what it is, Google it. The president, for the better part of the last 6 years, has been trying to put together a New Deal. And the investment that would have made in jobs, and these would have been good jobs, what it would have done for the economy, what it would have done for our education system as we would upgrade schools all over the country with technology and, again, infrastructure that allows them to be competitive everywhere. I want people, and maybe one of the things that you and I can do is really put together a series of programs to educate people on why it's so critically important we elect a Democrat to the presidency and do our best to elect a majority in the Senate and try to get the House back to where it needs to be. We don't move. We don't do anything. I'm getting scared.
Well, it's been a consistent problem, but the thing is that the millennials are actually very highly involved, and they're tuned in, and they're tuned into other things than look. I mean, I write on Huffington Post, and I write on Liberals Unite, and the amount of traffic that some of my articles get in sheer volume is absolutely astounding, and the demographic is, under 40 years old, 25 to 38 years old. So we have a lot of people that are paying attention in the way that they pay attention. And let's not forget that we're looking at a young electorate that came up and matured during a recession, during a financial crisis, and their sense of capitalism is to get an education and come into the workforce with very few jobs and insurmountable debt. So someone like Bernie Sanders looks very attractive in that they have health care, they have, everything that he's talking about, and the inequality in wealth. They're seeing it in real time that they cannot get ahead. They cannot have the life that their parents had.
No, and that's a whole different conversation, that you leave a better generation to the next one than met you, and that's not happening. Rihanna had a question, so let me welcome Rihanna to the program. She, of course, is our guiding light here on Blog Talk USA. Rihanna, pleasure to have you with us this morning. I'll let you go ahead and talk.
Thank you. Good morning, guys. I'm sitting here listening, and every time there was a pause when you were talking about the madness, I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, what do you say? What do you say about this insanity that's going on. The cage match that was the debate, this craziness about, how they're reacting to the death of a Supreme Court justice who I thought they loved and respected and looked to as, his strict interpretation of the Constitution is something they respected. And instead of reacting in a normal way, they start on, we don't have a legitimate president in office. Let's block everything. I just wanted to comment and say, I think that, Richard, you made a really, really good point, that they are really showing themselves for who they are. It's like they have ripped off the clothes and they're flying a freak flag. This is who we are. If you were confused before, we're showing you. So I think, yes, it's madness and crazy on the GOP side of things, but I'm kind of happy they're doing it, because if it wasn't clear before, I think it'll be clear now. So great show this morning.
Well, thank you. But with that said, Rhianna, I'm not so sure that I can get on board with that statement, because I have been so wrong in the last year when it comes to Republican politics. And
right.
Yeah, just when I think, okay, hey, listen, people are finally going to get it, they don't.
I understand that too, completely. That's the fear. We can't be too overconfident, because what we see as insanity, the people in that audience, that's who we're dealing with when it comes to voters, and those are reliable voters, that Republican-based. And that's frightening.
When it comes to this kind of thing, this is my theory, right? And I'll tell you why it works. It's like when everything's going nuts around you, you've got to sit back and relax and take a deep breath and let the whirling dervishes whirl, right? That's, in theory, what you're supposed to do. And when I look back at the debate between Mitt Romney and President Obama, when Mitt Romney started talking about how Obama didn't properly address the Benghazi attack, and rather than correct him, Obama just said, "Go on." And Romney walked right into it and was corrected by the moderator. And that particular situation, that little instance in that debate, flew around the world at lightning speed. And it's exactly what's going to happen here. Let the whirling dervishes whirl. They'll shoot themselves in the foot with this. People are paying attention. They live in this little conservative ideological bubble that actually believe that Romney was ahead, and he didn't even write a concession speech. And so they cater to their base. They say the things that their base wants to hear, but it's not a strong base. At least not in the last election it wasn't. Obama took it, was reelected by 5 million votes. So there are a lot more people paying attention than I think certainly the Republicans give them credit for, but I think even at times that we give them credit for.
I sure hope that's true, Z. Listen, we're out of time, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we are out of time. Let's preview a little of what we've got going on tomorrow, because every morning we talk, and Z says, "Well, if we get to, we'll get." I say to him every morning, "We'll get to that," and well, we didn't. And that happens every morning. But let's preview a little bit of what's happening tomorrow and let people know where to get more info.
Well, more info you can get at tnztalk.com. You can get our Facebook feed, iTunes, Stitcher. Please go up there. Please subscribe to our podcast. Please rate us. That helps us a lot. We also have links to our donation site at Patreon if you want to pledge or help fund us so we can keep doing what we're doing. And tomorrow, what I'm hoping we get to is I had recently written an article on the HuffPost about the Washington Post smearing of Bernie Sanders. I'm doing a follow-up on that on Jonathan Kiphart's Twitter activity and things like that. I need to get a little bit of research done, and hopefully in the next couple of days we're going to have the Vice President of Operations for Good Vibrations out of San Francisco to weigh in on what this whole Supreme Court thing means for the LGBT community, sex positive, and all that. And
absolutely excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that will do it for us for today. We are out of time. Our thanks again to everybody at Blog Talk USA, Ron Spikes, Rihanna, everybody else there. In the meantime, go to tandz.com, get all the information, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day, and as always, I ask that you be well.